No matter what the state of my garage might tell you, having a home that is clean and organized and free of clutter isn't just less stressful, it's safer. Joining us today is Angela from Major Moms, Major Organizing, who's going to tell us all about how we can keep our home safer and why we should do that. While you're here, please do remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. If you really like what we're doing, please do come over to Patreon, where you can support our efforts for as little as $3 a month. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Angela. Let's get to work. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is Angela Cody-Rouget, aka Major Mom. Hello, Major Mom.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Angela, aka Major Mom, used to have the keys to the nukes, but now she declutters and organizes homes with her teams of liberators in various locations. Angela spent 14 years dedicated to serving her country in the U.S. Air Force as a satellite control commander and missile combat crew commander. She attained the rank of major, and her husband nicknamed her Major Mom after their first child was born in 2005. When that happened, she decided military life and motherhood were no longer compatible. So she left the military and created Major Organizers, a residential organizing company. She's been building the brand since November of 2006. She was featured on the military episode of Shark Tank on February 5th, 2016, and began franchising her concept in 2017. She's earned a BA in speech communication at Indiana University and an MBA from the University of Colorado. Angela is a member of the National Association of Professional Organizers and the executive director of Faithful Organizers. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and thank you for your service, ma'am.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And Angela's on today to talk about how organization and decluttering your house can contribute to family safety. I think everybody who's tripped over a kid's toy or stepped barefoot on a Lego intuitively gets this, but that rabbit hole goes a lot deeper. And I'm really glad you're on today to talk about this underserved but very important topic.
Oh, thank you so much. I definitely have some terrible stories that I could share about accidents in the home and how much they have increased due to the amount of clutter in homes. And you know, sometimes accidents in the home result in just a stubbed toe or a you know, ouch, that hurt, that Lego is so sharp. And other accidents result in unfortunate things, broken bones and death. And so the people, I think when we talk about clutter in the home causing accidents, they immediately in their mind go to hoarding. Oh, they must be talking about hoarders and the hoarding situation. And any of the stories that I share with you today, I wanted to put a little note out there for everyone that Major Organizers, I'm known as Major Mom, that's my nickname, but our company, Major Organizers, we actually aren't trained and certified to work in hoarding situations. So every story I share with you today is a real life story from a real life family that is normal, average Americans that just have too much going on and too much stuff in their house. So fair enough. So nobody go there, because that's not where I'm taking you.
I think this is hugely important. You know, when you talk about family safety, the mind immediately goes to home invasions, burglars, stranger abductions, but the stats just don't bear that out. If you're an adult, it's heart disease that's going to get you. It's something health related. And if you're a child, it's accidental death, an accidental injury that creates tragedies. And decluttering our homes and keeping them organized, I think, is a really important self-defense step in that process.
Absolutely. I was blown away when I was a speaker for a Rotary Club years and years ago. And the leader of the Rotary Club happened to be a fire chief, you know, because they all have their different positions. And the fire chief was giving my introduction and things like that. And he told a story that just rocked my world. I did not expect it, but he said that in his, 30 years of experience and many education classes and all he's done, he said that the number one reason people do not get out of their home, children and adults, during a fire, during an emergency, is because of clutter. And when he was introducing me, because he was like, oh, I love this lady, she's going to declutter your home. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had chills down my spine, because he sees that people could have gotten out of their home very easily. And he sees right where they tripped and what they tripped on because of where they are. And he says it's clutter. And again, these are normal, average Americans that just have too much stuff in the way when there's smoke and things you can't see. So a lot of people get into a lazy habit of letting our walkways kind of get cluttered up with things. And so this story that he told started to really ignite my passion for working with moms and their busy families to declutter their homes. Because after that, I started really becoming aware of why people were hiring us. We go a little bit deeper. One mom hired us because she broke her tailbone, because she had a habit of keeping everything at the top of the stairs to bring down and at the bottom of the stairs to bring up. And that's very common. But we're talking about one or two items, but that little pile would grow into a mountain of things because of the speed of life and this chaos in the home. And she tripped over the pile coming down the stairs, a little bit sleepy in the morning, tripped over the pile, which may have gotten moved a little bit by the husband and kids, and went straight down the stairs. And thank God didn't go forward and break her, face, but she caught herself, and then she broke her tailbone. And that's because of clutter at the stairs. Kids are falling all the time because we have to get that cell phone plugged in, or we're going to vacuum. So we're going to plug in that vacuum, and we're going to start vacuuming. Then the phone rings, we stop vacuuming, and then the plug and the cords are still in the walkways of everyone. And so we've had kiddos trip over those vacuum cleaner cords. We've had kids pull down cell phones, little babies onto their heads because they pull on that wire. And, tell me, is the cell phones getting bigger like they used to be? Because it used to be really like small. Don't you think they're getting bigger?
I think so, yeah. My wife's I can't even hold.
I know. It's like those suckers, they come down on a baby's head, and that's going to leave a bruise. I mean, it's going to hurt. So I wish we'd go back to those, we were going the right direction. It seems like now we're going back to the gargantuan and cell phones. But imagine you have your laptop plugged in, because, again, it needs to charge. Just like before we get on today, I'm like, oh gosh, I need to charge up. And for a minute, you have it charged up on the counter in your kitchen, and baby, toddler pulls that cord down, and you think, well, that cord has a quick release from the laptop, so it's certainly going to release before the laptop comes down. But depending on what angle they're pulling, or what they're pulling on, or who's pushing, hopefully nobody's at the bottom side of that laptop coming down. But usually then the laptop is done, because it's just got pulled off the counter. And the tales like this go on and on. I don't know if you have any personal experience, not in your home, of course, but
neither confirm nor deny that.
Yes. Tell me about your friend that you heard about that tripped over clutter. Have you heard about any of these stories in the home?
Oh, so many. My background's in martial arts instruction, and I learned a very long time ago that the most important physical self-defense skill you'll ever learn is break falls, how to fall down with getting hurt without getting injured, because of the tangled hose in the backyard, or the laundry basket left in the hallway, or the kids' toys spread about, and all those different times that you fall down. Can't even give a number on the times I've been told that somebody I knew fell down because they tripped over something. Especially at our house, it's usually the yard, less so than inside. But yeah, that's very important point. And I wanted to circle back to, it never occurred to me that this was a fire safety issue. And I can completely envision why that's a concern. I mean, I can think of how easily I trip on something when I have 100% clear visibility and the room isn't full of smoke and I'm not charged up on adrenaline because the house is on fire. I could see how that kind of broken field run that some families get used to in a cluttered home just absolutely isn't something they're able to manage in a fire, and that could lead so easily to tragedy.
Absolutely. And I think that's what really pierced my soul when he was telling me the story, because he was really driving home that he's 100% sure the number one reason people don't get out of their homes is because they trip over clutter or trip over something that was in the way that wasn't supposed to be there, or there's just too much furniture in the house, and you're trying to make an escape. Another really tragic story that I'm personally aware of are people slipping on magazines and papers in their home. A lot of Americans in general, I don't know about other countries, but Americans in general will have stacks of magazines that they just feel like they have to read, or the fear of not knowing what's in that magazine just haunts them at night, I guess. And so, they'll have stacks of magazines everywhere, and stacks of things to read. And unfortunately, they tend to end up on the floors, by a chair, or the floor by a desk, something like that. And we got hired by a client that said, I just can't live like this anymore. My brother hired you, and he said, you guys are amazing. I can't find anything. I can't even move in my office. And he said, there's papers and stuff all over the floor. So we were scheduled to go and do a free evaluation, a free estimate, we call it. And for the following week. And his brother called us the day before we were supposed to go work, give him an estimate, see what we could do, see if we could help him. His brother called and said, Alan won't be able to meet with you guys tomorrow. I said, oh, okay, no problem. We can reschedule. He said, no. He slipped on the magazines, hit his head on the edge of the desk, of course, just right on that corner. It's how it always goes down. And he died from that head injury.
Good
and
Lord.
So I couldn't believe it. I thought, man, I just got into this career to declutter homes, and things like that. But the longer I've been in the industry and the career, the more I hear how devastating clutter can be for certain households. And that's what we're here today to share, that message, is that decluttering and organizing can go a long way for your mental state of health, but also for your physical safety.
And to say nothing of organizing not just the clutter, but the paperwork and infrastructure of your life, making sure that your health insurance bill is paid on time, making sure that you have enough money in the bank to refresh your fire extinguisher every year, and all of those other factors, right?
Right.
That's wow. So you said you have some stories. Now that was a terrible story, and just one of just magazines that had slipped and fallen. I've had that experience too, stepping on a piece of paper and it slides a little bit, and it's like almost like stepping on a banana peel in the cartoons.
It is. I mean, they make funny things about this. Three Stooges is like all you can picture is this is a Three Stooges moment. A lot of there's just a lot more where those come from, but I shared those three today because I felt like it was really important for you don't have to live in a crazy cluttered home to have a fall or an accident from the child or the adult. And there's beautiful stories where that comes. We've organized 2,500 homes in 15 years. And we've probably not only saved marriages because they were at each other's rooms, but we've definitely prevented accidents in the home by relocating where charging stations are, relocating where the vacuum cleaners get put away, just relocating and organizing where the dangerous things can be for children. And a lot of falls in the home for children don't result in death. They just result in an unfortunate broken arm, broken leg. I mean, it's a disaster when it happens. And
Yeah.
almost all of the time, I think most experts would agree that they were preventable if certain things weren't in a certain place. Like, for instance, everybody seems to know about don't put the bed for a child in front of the window. I call that space planning and organizing and designing a room. Don't put a chair that right next to a dresser, that just makes it easier for it to get on. So depending what age, I think that organizing and space planning go a long way for little kids. I don't know why, but kids like to open dresser drawers and climb up them.
Yep.
It's just ingenious that they're thinking, oh, I'll open these and create a step, because they don't have any clue that dresser's going to come down on them. So
Well, that was hugely important. We actually, one of our earlier interviews was with a product safety specialist, and she's of the opinion that if you do two things in your home, you put your medicine up high and you anchor your damn bookcases and dressers. Because those two things cause so many injuries and deaths every year.
Yes.
And like you pointed out, they don't always end with the child dying, but as a parent, you already know the emergency room is an enormous pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And we don't want to go there.
Super expensive.
Yeah.
I've had ER visits, none from accidents of all, just from issues with the kiddos, and it's like, oh my gosh, those bills are horrendous. And when you're space planning a room and organizing a kitchen and things like that, really keeping safety at the forefront is so important, because that too much stuff on the counter also results in oh, I hate to tell you this, but I mean, we've had clients call us after there was a fire in their kitchen. Why was there a fire in the kitchen? Because they had all their office papers in the kitchen. They had papers in the kitchen right next to the stove. Somebody opened a window, so a little bit of breeze came in, and there you go. There's soup on the stove that's been cooking all day. It hits the gas, the flame, and there you have it. It's very common for people to keep papers in the kitchen, and that is a no-go zone for papers.
Especially if you have a gas stove.
Yeah, especially if you have a gas stove.
Yeah. Now, you've used a term twice that may be something that all of my viewers know, but is new to me: space planning. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, sometimes people just they go in and they set up their office or their bedrooms or their playrooms or their kids' rooms. They kind of don't put a ton of thought in it. They're like, oh, well, this bookshelf fits on this wall. This is going to go here. They haven't really thought down and really thought, what is the safest way to set up this bedroom for my child? And so in organizing, we always think functional first, and then functional and safe, then beauty and all the other things. Like, for example, sometimes I said earlier, people will put a chair right by the dresser. So it's just so easy for them to climb. And I'm talking about the little ones. So older ones can drag the chair and create all kinds of chaos. This is not what this show is about. Older kids can create tragedy in the home by dragging stuff around. We're talking about little kiddos that aren't strong enough to do so, but they'll use things to climb up. When you space plan an office, for example, where are all the cords? Are they right there where the baby's, always crawling or walking? Or for a short period of time, do you have the desk against the wall so that the cords and the computers don't get pulled off onto someone? And sometimes we're like, oh, I don't like the office with the desk against the wall right now. And I always say, sometimes we just have our rooms configured a certain way for a short season, just for safety. So maybe sometimes just put the desk against the wall. I don't have mine against the wall now because I like to look out the window. Mine faces out, faces towards the door. But if I had a huge desktop on my desk that thing would be against the wall like it was when we were, when we had little ones, so that nobody can pull that computer off onto themselves. So space planning is thinking about the orientation of the furniture to maximize the space in the room, but also for safety. That is so important. Sometimes people will say, well, this is so pretty to put it by the fireplace, and I just did a house 2 days ago, and one of the interior designers put this like a this old fashioned metal thing. I'm not really sure what it was, but there are blankets and magazines and things to read inside. And so, but it looked pretty by the fireplace. Okay. It just looked pretty there. So sometimes in space planning and space design, pretty is the last thing on my mind as an organizer and space planner. So when I went over there, I said, well, that's kind of strange. That's metal and it's by the fireplace, probably, and it's a real fireplace, not the gas that don't, heat up. A real fireplace, that metal could get hot. So I took the lid off of it, and the thing was, huge. I took the lid off. I said, that's full of blankets and books and magazines. So I said, well, that's going to get hot and that can't go there. And even if the things inside don't burn up, if a little one touches, because he has grandkids, the guy we were organizing and unpacking his house, that could get so hot they could burn themselves. And that's what I mean about space planning where things are going to go for the safest home that you can live in, and sacrifice beauty. And space planning is also about sacrificing for certain seasons, the lamps, the vases, those just all don't get to always go out at certain seasons of your life. I don't know about you, but I've had watched children break stuff on accident. I remember my cousins breaking something of my grandmother's. And 2 months ago, we were at my mom's and my nephews broke her lamp. I mean, it's just always going on when you have little ones moving around. What do you think about lamps? People don't think about not putting lamps up for now, vases, all kinds of things that can, cut you fall on them. Again, they're not deadly, but it sure is a pain in the patooties to go to this emergency room.
I remember my youngest brother, when I was growing up, we had just one of those standard table lamps, and he knocked it over and got pinned under him. He was young enough that a lamp was heavy. And by the time we got to him, he had a 3rd-degree burn on his leg from the light bulb. And that's less of a concern now that most people are moving to LED lights, which you can hold all day. But that kind of thing, that's exactly, it seems like the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. My own crazy story. We were living in a tiny little apartment while we were waiting to, purchase a home in Denver. And so we had my daughter and my son in a bunk bed, this tiny little room with a tiny little apartment. And for some reason there were no overhead lights. I mean, just like a lot of builders don't put lights in the room. So you're forced to get lamps. So we had a tall stand-up lamp, and it was a tiny little room. So we had it at the end of the bunk bed, so they could, so it would be out of the way, wouldn't fall over. My son, every morning when he kicked his blankets off, it was on the lamp. So one morning or evening, I can't remember, I said, wow, that smells like burnt coffee. What is that smell? And a lot of times when you're in transition in temporary places, you're not space planning properly. You're like, oh, okay, we're just here for a second. And I said, what does that smell? My husband's like, I don't smell anything. And I was like, I smell burnt coffee. We're not leaving until we find out what it is. Something's not right. And his sheet was just slowly burning on the light. Could have been disaster. Could have been a disaster. And that is poor space planning. Not thinking a little one's going to throw his blankets off the bed. You're thinking they stay on the bed. And that could have been a horrifying situation.
Wow. So it sounds like space planning is almost our first line of defense against a lot of things, preventing problems before they occur. And you've mentioned tipping furniture, stuff the kids can climb on and fall off of, fire hazards, which I think is something that a lot of people don't think about, and then just tripping issues. What are some other things to think about when I'm space planning for my kids' room in my home to keep my family safe?
I think, that another thing to plan for is the common theme that we see in a lot of homes. We've just worked with the home yesterday, and the number of items in the home make it almost impossible to declutter. So the space planning, you have double the amount of furniture that the room will hold. And that seems, it's hard to describe when you see it, but that means that you're certain that you're going to crack your toe on something getting in and out of that room, or you're going to hit your hip on the side. And what happens is, so if you have a room that's full of furniture and things, and it may look very pretty, it may be all well done, but you can become like a little pinball in some of those rooms where you crack your toe, then you grab your toe. Next thing you know, you're hitting yourself on the next piece of furniture, and then you fall onto the next piece of furniture. So it sounds funny, but I've watched it happen. And it's like, oh, hit my toe. Oh, and then as you fall down, now you're hitting the other piece of furniture and the other. And so it's like, there's too much in the room. And I think that's what the final really concept of space planning is 95% of the times my clients will say, well, I'm going to get another bookcase, because when we get there, there's hundreds of books on the floor next to the bookcase, or kind of they've come out of the bedroom, or something has happened where it's growing and expanding piles. And they're saying, well, we're going to get another bookcase. And sometimes we just have what we call a come to Jesus meeting, and we just sit down and say, or you need less books.
Blasphemy, man. Lies and calumny. But I understand. I once tried to have that conversation with my lovely and talented wife, and now we just have a lot of bookcases. But she works in the publishing industry, so it's a professional thing, or that's what we tell ourselves.
There's no hope for you then.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, we've been in homes that are wall to wall, floor to ceiling bookcases, and they're beautiful and wonderful. I'm talking about a makeshift. Oh, we got another 2 bookshelf. Oh, now we got another one we stacked on top of that one, and now we've got a high one, a short one. Oh, we got this one for free in the trash. Oh, this one was $2 at Goodwill, and before you know it, we have this makeshift room just full of wobbly books.
Cinder blocks and raw planks as far as the eye can see.
That'd actually probably be safer.
Oh wow! So that's space planning as a first concept of starting with some plan for success. But as we know, plans don't always work out. The first casualty of battle is the battle plan. So even if we've got our space planning all set up, I'm sure that you've seen some particular challenges to clutter, or to not being cluttered, over and over again. What are some of the rookie mistakes that families make that make their homes more cluttered and more dangerous?
I'd say that, if you go to majororganizers.com and you look up our methodology of organizing, we share it with the world. You can go to the website. It's called the Major Mom Method of Organizing. And there's an organized approach to organizing your home, which includes the space plan. So at first, the first step in organizing and space planning a room is to sit down and think about what you want that room to function like, to feel like. Really take a second. Sometimes people just set it up just to be done with it, and there's no thought process happening there. The first step, if you go to our website, the Major Mom Method, is get your vision. It's called picture it. Picture what you thought, what you want, and then the next phase of organizing is plan it. Come up with an action plan and a space plan. So the majority of organizing and space planning is thinking. The last phase in organizing is the action steps. It's where you start sorting and treasuring, meaning keeping what you want. establishing homes for things, putting them away in the right containers. So I would say the number one, to answer your question, the number one mistake that we see our clients make is they buy all the containers first, when it's the last step in the organizing process. So how that ends up going badly for them is when we get there, they'll say, well, I bought all these bins because they were on sale. But none of those bins fit on the racks that we had to purchase for the garage, let's say, or none of those pretty baskets fit on any of the shelves. And so if we weren't there, what may happen is they would make those baskets fit somewhere because they're in love with the basket and the prettiness of it, and not in love with where it goes. So that's where things should start getting put away, because the storage solution that they got wasn't actually the proper storage solution. And that's the number one mistake. I'm not sure if you're relating to this, so ask me questions if I'm not being clear.
I hear that. That was a mistake I made a long time ago. And since then, what I've done is if I'm organizing a new space, I'll make out of cardboard and duct tape a temporary container to the dimensions that it fits, and then experiment with that and change them around until I've got the perfect solution. Then I'll go ask the internet for a container of the size that we found. Although sometimes, because the stuff's already in boxes that fit just nice, it might just stay like that for a year or two before I get around to it. But I'm convinced the concept is sound.
Yes. And it's always a real bummer rainy when we have to tell the client, that had fun shopping for all the stuff, that we'll use whatever we can use that makes sense and everything else can go back. And they're like, what? Because the organizing solution container is the very, very last part of the whole organizing process. And that is the number one mistake we see. People go to Office Depot and load up their carts with, organizers. Not one of them are going to work with how they think, how their office is set up, and things like that.
So it sounds like one of the real things that we want to do with those containers and everything else is to set our homes up for organizational neatness success by having homes for everything, by getting the right container in the right position, trading out that garage sale shelf that was kind of nice and kind of works for the one that actually is appropriate for the space. Maybe it's a little smaller, maybe it's a little narrower, maybe it's a little taller. And so that we have the ability to put everything away.
Yes. I think this might be offensive to some people, but since I was a major in the Air Force, I'm just going to say it. And if it doesn't relate to you, then you can't be offended. But if you hear my next words and you're offended by it, then take that as kind of a wake up call, maybe that, maybe there's something needs to change in your household. So and this just happened with my client yesterday. I do a lot of virtual organizing. And so the client said, I hate this TV, this big corner TV table they got for free for their TV. And I said, well, why do you hate it? We always drill down, what's the deal? Well, she stubs her toe on it all the time because the room is so full of furniture. And so we tried to come to a logical conclusion that the big corner TV thing for this new season of her life, becoming a grandparent and having kiddos over in this little wonderful creative room, it's time for that thing to go back to someone else for free. And maybe the TV doesn't need to be in the creative library room. Maybe it's just done. And so what I'm submitting to you and the listeners today is, if you are stubbing your toe on things, you are tripping on things, these are happening in your home that you are responsible for, then please take action today. Get rid of that piece of furniture. Stop plugging things in where people are pulling them down. It will reduce the stress and the risk.
You know what this reminds me of more than anything else is when you're talking about self-defense from crime, because I think that our conversation here is about self-defense as well. If you define self-defense as staying healthy and alive for as long as possible. But if you're talking about self-defense from crime, one of the mistakes people make all the time is they see something sketchy, but then they convince themselves that nothing's wrong, and they choose to ignore that sign until you're coming out of the mall with a couple of bags of Christmas presents, your kids in tow, and there's a couple of really shady characters leaning against a van right next to your car. And instead of going back inside and getting a security guard to walk you to your car, you say, nothing's can possibly go wrong. It's Christmas. And the next thing you know, you're in a carjacking or a mugging. That sounds like you're describing a very similar process where you're stubbing your toe every day. There's a cord you just know a kid's going to trip over, but you convince yourself, nothing's going to go wrong until something goes wrong.
Yeah. Oh, it's been like that for 20 years. Oh, that's been there for 20 years, or only stubbed my toe, nothing worse has happened. You're right. It's just we just convince ourselves to allow unsafe situations to enter our lives, and because we don't take a conscious action or make a conscious decision, I guess is best to say, you know what, we're done living like this. This is not going to be our home. And so sometimes people get frustrated because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're an organizer, you know how to declutter, you know what to do. And I'm going to share 3 quick steps for people who are like, I don't even know where to start. That we hear that all the time. I know you hear that. It's like, there's so many safety things. Where do I start? What do I do? Yeah. Obviously, you can start with your home, because that's where you live in every single day. And when you turn that light on and that radar on, your radar will go on for other places outside the home, right? Like, ooh, that doesn't seem safe. And so when our radar is on at home, not in a hyperactive way, but in a contemplative, what do you call it? Not a awareness, then it comes to your spirit. Sometimes you say, ooh, that doesn't feel right. If you get that, ooh, that doesn't feel right, I call that a gift from God, or wherever you want to call it. And it's that gift to say, you know what, something doesn't feel right about the way this room is set up. Then sit down and look at that room and really process where everything is. So the first step in getting your house completely decluttered and organized is the most fun step, I say, is we just say, if you've got a really cluttered situation, do this. Get rid of everything in your home that you don't need, use, want. You definitely don't love those things. If it's broken, let it go. Sometimes you just have to get to a season of life where you let things go. And that process begins to create a safe environment. And there's hundreds of places you can take your things now. So sometimes it's just sitting around going, you know what? My kid did trip over that yesterday, or, that has been pulled down twice, and by the grace of God, I saved it. Okay, well, no. That either goes away or it gets boxed up for when they're out of the house. I was going to say teenagers, but they're worse. Teenagers sometimes, get a little bit rowdy and crazy, and faces then get knocked off and, cracked skulls. So does that sound like an easy step, or does it sound overwhelming? Because I know it's I say it's fun, but maybe it's not.
It sounds like an easy step, but I do have a very specific question. What if, hypothetically, honey, if you're listening to this, hypothetically, your spouse is much more resistant to jettisoning things that, for example, they haven't interacted with in 2 years, and the last time they even thought about it was the last time you asked them if you could get rid of it?
Yes.
How do you negotiate with a spouse who is more of a pack rat, as we used to say before people started using the term hoarder?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to save your marriage and everybody who's listening. You cannot browbeat children or spouses to get rid of their stuff. That is in our rules of engagement when we work with clients. Here's the trick. You hire outside perspective to work with your wife. You hire a professional organizer. You hire somebody who has a vested interest in creating a safe environment. I know that sounds like I'm promoting my industry, but the worst thing that spouses do to each other is they focus on each other's stuff. It is so common. We just worked with a couple last week and there's like, oh, it's so easy to want to get rid of his stuff. And I said, yeah, but we're going to focus on your stuff. And once we got the wife focused on her stuff, and her stuff was all over the house, trust me, every nook and cranny. Once I got her to just focus on her stuff with the promise that her husband would follow suit if he allowed us to work with him, she came to the realization how much of the problem and clutter was hers. And the person who has the most clutter will tend to look at the other person's stuff saying, oh, it's in my way, because they want that person's space. Not that that's you and your wife, but the best way you can get help when that is happening frequently is to hire a good professional organizer that seems to love kids, love families. Not all professional organizers, enjoy working in chaotic households with kids. So find one that seems, there's plenty of them around the world now. Find one that you can work with virtually or in person. That honestly is the answer, because the other solution is terrible. We have had wives throw husband's stuff out, not on our watch because we don't allow that. But what we try to say is, whoa, whoa, whoa. Could you at least neatly bin and box it up and label it so that when he gets back from this trip, you guys can have that conversation, but we are not going to take this stuff to Goodwill for you. We never support that. No organizer worth his or her weight in salt should ever contribute to helping a family member get rid of somebody else's stuff without them. And there's a safety issue right there, because I mean, people can come home and things can happen.
Yeah. All right, so bringing in a neutral third party and focusing on your own stuff, that's really smart. And to be fair to my wife, she definitely has more stuff, but I'm responsible for more clutter. I've always got projects here, there, and in the corner, and the tools are laid out, or there's a bunch of papers I've been scribbling on. So I'll credit where blame is due. But I think that's something, place that a lot of couples do come across, where they have different visions about what is too much stuff, what is too much clutter. And so when we have this first step of take a look at your stuff, get rid of everything that doesn't serve you. What's her name? Kondo, right? That was, if it doesn't spark joy,
yeah,
it goes. Okay.
Yeah,
what was
and
step two?
I'm definitely, I like her. I love her Japanese approach, but obviously my broom doesn't spark joy. And, there are a lot of things in my home that don't spark joy. And that's kind of the point. And I'm glad you brought it up. It's like, my husband's stuff rarely sparks joy for me. I don't enjoy it. I don't like it. It's not mine, right? Like, we get so in love with our stuff. So it's a cute term when you live alone and you're by yourself, you're minimalist. But when you live in a family, what I said was, if you don't use it, you don't need it. So you don't even use it. You don't need it. You don't like it. Our homes are filled with stuff we don't like, which would be in alignment with her spark joy. And it's broken. So it's not even used. It's not repairable. Some people will have a house full of stuff that will get fixed someday. They just become clutter. And the more clutter, I hate to say, we won't end on a terrible, terrible note, because we'll come back to the positive side. But sometimes people don't think of clutter and all the things that it harbors. Dust mites, and I'm not a clean freak. Trust me on this. But the more stuff there is to clean and dust, the more health hazards can be. For instance, if you have a child that has asthma or severe asthma, you have got to become as minimalist as possible for the season of their life. So in other words, it's okay to box and bin stuff up for when they maybe grow out of the asthma or they get to another stage in life. But dust in the home is so devastating to children with asthma. And so the other thing that people don't think about is they think you can box up everything neatly in all these boxes. And we've gone to homes and like, well, that's all organized in cardboard boxes and labeled. And I said, well, how long has it been there? It could have been there for 5 years to 25 years. And once we start organizing those boxes, we find that the mice just were so happy that all that cardboard was used, because they eat the cardboard and then they eat all the contents inside of the boxes. Just 2 months ago, we unpacked 50 boxes of books that were in storage, and most of them were destroyed. There was mouse poop in them, mice eating the books. And so if you are going for long-term storage in a home to keep it safe, you know, for the, I guess, respiratory safety, use plastic bins just to prevent that kind of thing, because the health hazards in a home could be considered as safety hazards.
Well, that makes good sense. Now, you had talked about 3 steps for a beginner. And I think we kind of, our train of thought derailed there a little bit, as we're wont to do after step 1. What's step 2?
Okay, so step 1 was get rid of everything you don't need, want, love, and like. The second step is to, this is going to be interesting. The second step is to stop the incoming. Ouch. What does that mean? I know I work with missiles and people always think I'm talking about bombs, but because they don't want to realize I'm talking to you. Don't shop if you can't control yourself when you're shopping. Don't go to a garage sale. Pass that garage sale up. Stop the incoming. Stop bringing stuff to the home. Stop bringing a bag home. Stop shopping on Amazon. You must stop. Today is the first day of the rest of your safety home life, because you've got to make a conscious decision to stop bringing stuff home. Business people are well known for going to a trade show and bringing home bags and bags of stuff and business cards and things. Then they go to another show and another networking event, another and another and another. Next thing you know, you just have bags and bags and bags of stuff. They collect dust, and you can never get ahead. You can never get ahead of the situation if you keep bringing stuff into the situation. And so stop the incoming is so important, but it's so hard for so many people that are on the roll of buying another book. I got to have this book. Oh, this book is out. I got to have this. Oh, this gadget. Men and women have their gadgets. So just stop the incoming might sound like, what? But
it's good. It's good financial sense too. And I think, you know, I don't know when viewers you're watching this, but we're recording this as the vaccines are starting to roll out for the COVID crisis. I think a lot of people have started, you know, hitting up that Amazon smack pipe as a way of coping. And, you know, I know we're getting packages every day almost, it seems like. And that's a habit that we can rein back and reclaim some of the space in our homes.
It's true. And COVID is such a unique situation. Of course, we were ordering things online, you know, and things like that, but the habit might still continue. And that's dangerous, because we just filling our homes with things. I'm not talking about consumables. I never am talking about consumables. If you buy a lot of food and you consume it, you're good. You're golden. If you buy a lot of food at the grocery stores and accumulate it, and there's grocery bags everywhere and clutter and tripping hazards and cans of food and, you know, just things everywhere, that's not okay. That's just not okay to fill up the floors and rooms with cans and things as we exiting the pandemic. It was a situational thing. The third thing you can do as we are finishing up our time together, the third thing you can do is organize one room at a time. This may, for some people, if it's the kitchen that you cannot function in, it may be one drawer. What happens to humans is when you organize one drawer, and it just looks really good and everything doesn't slide around in there, and you're like, oh wow, that's so nice. You actually organize, when you open it, you go, that's so nice. You feel so good about it that you get this release of endorphin, and it's the way our human bodies are created. When we accomplish a task, we get a natural high, and we want to go to the next task. That's why our tagline is, you know, organize, energize, liberate, because you're organized. Woo! You get the high, and you want to keep going But if you try to do the whole house, we have men and women, mostly women, who come to our workshops and they're all riled up because we go through a lot of things in our workshops about why we keep stuff, and we get to the bottom of some stuff. They go home and they basically lock the doors and tell everybody, we're not going anywhere until this whole house is organized and my car is in the garage. So they come home with this beastly goal, and it's just not possible. But you could get everyone working on one room or the garage together. Man, have I had whole families descend upon the garage under some guidance and direction by myself. And in one day, their cars are pulling in the garage and they haven't pulled in 20 years. So everybody come together as a family. It's safer to work together and be safe while you're organizing, because that's also a great opportunity for falls and tripping hazards. Is, oh, I set all these boxes here, the person turns around, trips over the box. So keep aisles clear, communicate while you're organizing. Yesterday, we did a huge unpack job, and we have a lot of china for this client. And so we were always talking, coming down, turning the corner, even in a family organizing session. Hey, I'm here, I'm coming around the corner, I've got my hands full. It's kind of fun, it creates an energy, but communication during decluttering is safe.
Yeah, my oldest, he's almost 21, but he's been a chef for a couple of years. And about 3 years ago, when he started really getting into it, he would start doing that kitchen communication he picked up. As coming behind you, coming around the corner, and damn if it didn't help.
It helps from some, you're in the kitchen with little ones, and you got a hot pot. Mama's got a hot pot. I'm turning around. A lot of communication goes a long way. Unfortunately, pets don't always listen. They're such a pain because, sometimes you're like, you got to get those dogs and cats out of the way while you're organizing. And that's one of our rules of engagement. We ask for the pets to be put into a separate room for their safety and ours. And that might be you too, is put your pets in a safe location when you're wrangling a room, because they can get hurt as well, and you can trip over them, and just so bad things happen when pets are in the mix of an important organizing day.
Well, that makes good sense. Now, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. But welcome. before we wrap up, could you tell folks a little bit more about Major Organizers? Where do you operate? How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. If you go to majororganizers.com, and that's with an S, majororganizers.com, you'll click on locations. Right now we're in Colorado, we're in Indianapolis, and we're in Phoenix, Arizona. Due to COVID, we did shut down our San Antonio and Columbus locations, and maybe we'll open those in 2022. The moms at those locations had to homeschool their kids for the rest of the year, and so there was no way to run a business. And so that we closed those down to be safe for those families, of course, safety first. And when you go to our website, you can see that we have virtual organizing. There's a contact, request a free estimate. And within a few days, we'll tell you how much it'll cost. And if you don't live near one of us, you can just find an organizer near you. Don't go with the cheapest, because it's usually not the best option. Go with one that seems to know what he or she is doing and has some experience in working with families. It's a very different environment when you work with families.
I would imagine so. So before we fully wrap up, what's something that you wish people asked you about more often?
Well, when they find out I'm a professional organizer, the first thing they always say is, "Oh, do you work with hoarders?" I mean, for 15 years, it's like it's like on cue, And so, but people never ask me, how do you guys work with how do you help someone with their own stuff? Because I know it's on their mind. I know they're thinking it. I was on Shark Tank 3 years ago, and Robert. And I forget the other shark that I think it was Mark. Robert was just fascinated with, how can you come? And he said it just like this. I don't think it made the airwaves, but he said, how can you come into my house and organize my stuff? I don't get it. So I wish more people would want to understand it. And the way I explain it to Robert and the way I explain it to you and your listeners is sometimes certain people have a gift. It's not always something easily explained. When you're born with this gift to create order and you have a passion for working with people, me, like moms and their busy families, dads, when I come into a home after a 6-page questionnaire, clarity on your vision, clarity on what you want for your home, and if the husband and wife aren't in alignment, bringing clarity to it. Then, like I said, after we get a good vision, we have a good action plan and space plan, then we dig in. And I warn you to hire anyone that doesn't have a sit down and think time before they come in and dig in, because those organizers are just putting cookie cutter solutions in place, which for many people that does work. But my company and most organizers want to put in sustainable, maintainable systems for you and your family. And I couldn't possibly know what that would be until we get some real conversation going and some honesty going, and then we come up with a solution. It should be a collaborative process. It should never feel like the organizer should never come in and go, go eat lunch.
Shoo.
I know that there's shows on Netflix like that, and it makes it seem like that. But those organizers on those shows have had days, if not months, of prep for those shows to go off the way they do. You don't just walk into someone's home and make it how they want it. And so that was my answer to Robert. It was a very long answer, but it made him realize that it is true. Someone can come in and work with you to get your home the way you want it.
I've rarely gotten in trouble by asking a professional their opinion about what they're a professional at and then listening to it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's a brilliant question. And anybody you ask that on your podcast is going to know the answer right away, because it's what we're dying to share.
Well, thank you again, Angela, for coming on. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a majorly organized day.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you found something useful or maybe even inspiring. If you liked what you saw, please take a few minutes to subscribe, like, and comment. Those little things add up to big help for the channel. If you loved it, consider checking out our Facebook page for more family safety news and information. And think about supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get early access, monthly training resources, blooper footage, and other exclusive benefits. You'll find links to both in the show notes. Most of all, thank you for being part of the safest family on the block team. Stay safe, everybody. See you next time.